Hello, good morning. Welcome, everyone. I'm Councillor Chris Atwell, Chair of the Planning Committee. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Assemble by Queen Victoria statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. Please, can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when you're finished, otherwise the camera will remain on you. Please, can everyone make sure their mobile phones are not too close to the microphones, as this can cause interference. During voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated. Okay, let's do some introductions. If we start with the committee, Judith.
Councillor Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward.
Good morning, Judith.
Councillor Mary Vallely, Cosham and Wimmering.
Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor John Smith, Eastern and Craneswater Ward.
Good morning, John.
Councillor Raymond Dent, Copner Ward.
Good morning, Raymond.
Good morning, all. Asghar Shah, Councillor for Cosham.
Thank you, Shah.
Councillor Peter Candlish, Eastern and Craneswater.
Thank you, Peter.
Councillor Gerald Allen Jackson, Milton Ward.
Thank you, Gerald. And officers?
Good morning, I'm Juliet Gill, I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor.
Thank you, Juliet.
Good morning, I'm Greg Chapman, Head of Development Management.
Thank you, Greg.
Good morning, Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Good morning, Ian.
Lisa Gallagher, Democratic Services.
Thank you, Lisa. And if I could ask anyone who's intending to speak today during the meeting to introduce themselves. Should we start over, Simon?
Good morning, Simon Hill, and I'm speaking on behalf of the owners of 29 Shadwell Road and 262 Chichester Road.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Good morning, Jim Briscoe, landlord and owner of 73 Margate Road.
Thank you, Mr. Briscoe.
Mr. Fielder, representing 29 Angerstein Road against 31.
Thank you, Mr. Fielder.
Good morning, Carrie-Anne Wells, agent for Applecore PDM, representing 3 of the applications on the agenda today.
Thank you, Carrie-Anne. Okay, thank you. Apologies for absence. Apologies received from Councillor Hannah Brent and Councillor Hunt. Anybody else have any apologies to give? No. Members, declarations of interest for today's meeting. Minutes of the previous meeting, I think pages 5 to 12 or something of the previous, in the previous meeting. We content? Anybody wish to?
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Smythe, thank you. Thank you, members. To today's substantive business.
Chair, can I just for the record, I'm sorry, I've got a funeral I need to get to, so I need to leave here at 11:30. I'll come straight back after the funeral, but if somebody can text me if the meeting is over, so that I don't run.
Okay. We wouldn't want you to run. Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Just I wanted to let you know we'll be leaving at 2 o'clock.
Fully expect us not to be here at 2 o'clock. Okay, today's substantive business, Margate Road. Greg, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is a proposal for a change of use from a 6-bed C4 HMO to a 7-bedroom sui generis HMO at 73 Margate Road. Our property is up on the presentation at the moment. A certificate of lawfulness was consented in 2020 for up to 6 residents, and a minor correction in that respect is made in the SMAT update. Permitted development works have been carried out at the building. It's the officer assessment that the proposed increase of 1 bedroom from 6 to 7 beds, which is achieved by the subdivision of one of the upper floor room bedrooms, is not a material change of use, and that a planning permission is not required. Almost all rooms meet the space standards as shown on page 57, other than 3 en suites by amounts that are considered to be de minimis in 2 instances and not significant in the 3rd, and bedroom 6, which is 0.1 metres squared below the 10 metres squared for room sizes where the combined living space is less than 34 metres squared. Notwithstanding this assessment, in respect of planning permission not being required, there is not considered to be any significant material harm by virtue of the proposal, which would increase occupancy by only 1 resident. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Briscoe, over to you. You have 6 minutes to give your deputation.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. Yes, I'm the owner, relatively new owner, and operator of the existing HMO. I fully endorse the officer's report and recommendation. I'd just like to draw members' attention to how the HMO operates at the moment, in that there's not been any issues in terms of noise, disturbance or traffic associated with this property, and I have strict procedures in place with the agent to ensure that the property fits in with the surrounding area and operates as a respectful shared house. There is ample space for additional occupant, which is confirmed by the officer, and also via the HMO licence, which permits 7 occupants. I think I'm correct in saying, just confirm that the use of up to 7 occupants would not be a material change of use, and as such would not require planning permission. However, I have applied for planning permission to secure the use formally and properly, rather than either via a certificate of lawful development or just implementing the use. I hope this reassures you somewhat that as a relatively new landlord, it is my absolute intention to be an ethical one and that aims to work with both the council, agent and the tenants to secure positive outcomes for all. I'd welcome the support of the committee with an approval of this application, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Briscoe. Now, members, Gerald?
You carry on, Chair, and if I would like to indicate to speak when you have finished speaking.
Members, do we believe this application requires planning permission, which is contrary to officer advice?
Thank you, Chair. As per normal in this committee, I'd like to move that this does need planning permission. It is absolutely clear and obvious to anybody that a planning permission that gives residents the right to have 6 people in does not give the right to have 7. Therefore, it's absolutely clear that it needs planning permission. And so the wording I would use is clear that this application needs planning permission as this area has a very high concentration of houses and multiple occupation. It's at 50% where our limit is 10%. And the additional development will add to the pressure of parking, rubbish, noise, antisocial behaviour in an area that's where the area could be and could cause, additional pressure on parking, rubbish, noise and antisocial behaviour.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the proposal? Councillor Smythe. Thank you. Okay, members.
Does the planning officer want to come back on any of that?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, if I may just remind members, as set out in the report, that previous assessments by officers, and as you have the assessment by officers here, in respect of our view is that moving from 6 to 7 in this location is not a material change of use for the reasons set out, and that is commensurate with previous decisions from the planning inspector in the Campbell properties and the Lane cases as well, which is also explained within the report, just for providing context for your assessment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That was set out in the report, and this committee has consistently taken the view that where a planning permission is given for up to 6 people and people want to move to 7, we've taken the view that it is the statement is absolutely clear and simple, and therefore it needs planning permission, and I hope that the committee continues with that.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just come back in, please? We've had some appeal decisions on Lane. There were 3 appeal decisions, and you basically need to look at why one additional occupant in this specific property would cause it to be a material change of use.
And Chair, my wording reflects that completely, and my thanks to the lawyer for supporting that.
Chair, I'm not supporting it. I'm saying that I don't think that's the case.
Okay, right, we've rehearsed this conversation. So we've decided that this does require planning permission. Well, those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Okay. All right, okay. Questions, members? Councillor Vernon-Jackson.
I couldn't see it in the report, but I don't know. This has got a certificate of lawful use as an HMO. So this was running as an HMO without planning permission for how many years? And it's nice to see the landlord here who's regularised the position, but for how long was it running as an illegal HMO? Because our job is to look at not who the current owner is, but the use of a building, and we can't. A current owner and maybe a very respectable and wonderful landlord, but that's not our job. Our job is to look at the building. So how long was this running as an HMO illegally without planning permission?
Thank you, Chairman. The certificate of lawfulness that was previously approved confirmed that the property had been in use for not more or up to 6 unrelated persons for a period of 10 years, and that period started before the Article 4 came into being, so the property was not ever in unlawful use. The certificate, which can be chosen to be applied for or not, just confirmed that position for the applicant.
So can I go just on a general thing? So any property that was an HMO before we brought in the SPD can continue to be an HMO without telling the planning department, without it being on the register, and just tough to the local residents?
It's the Article 4, not the
Article 4,
SPD,
yeah.
but the Article 4, prior to the Article 4, you didn't need planning permission to change your use into up to 6 resident HMO. So if you had changed your property into a 6-bedroom HMO prior to the Article 4, then you need to establish planning permission, and that was the use of the property. So you don't need to therefore come back. The Article 4 doesn't mean that properties that were already in use then become unlawful.
So our register, which we use to establish whether they're 10% or more, may not include lots of properties that were HMOs before the Article 4 direction came in. So our definition of whether it's okay to have a change of use to an HMO or not is entirely based on ones that have declared, but there can be masses that are undeclared, and therefore the figures that we look at may be completely wrong.
If I can assist, Chair, no is the short answer. The fact that it was never granted planning permission through this to the need of a change of use doesn't mean it wasn't on the register. Obviously, the LDC would have been a point where it was added to the register. And as I told this committee many times, obviously the register will be totally overhauled in January when every HMO, even the ones that fell below both the need for licensing and planning, will be put on there. So whatever concerns one has about the register, entirely unfounded where they may be, they will be replaced in January. And in each and every case, officers individually assess applications. We consult ward members, we consult the local communities, we of course engage with the licensing team to ensure the information that we present to you is entirely accurate so that you don't mislead yourselves in this way.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about page 57 and the table at the top. I must just check whether or not the second column of the table, the size provided for in the gardens, is actually correct. I accept that the area provided is as stated, The figure I'm worried about is the combined living space at 22.5 metres when when the size provided for in the gardens is 6.51 metres. I think I had understood, and maybe I'm just having a funny 5 minutes, that you had to have 10 metres squared in order to justify 22.5 metres squared for a combined living space, and that it should be either 32 or 35 metres squared if the bedrooms are under 10 metres squared. If you look at the other tables,
yes,
that figure is wrong, I think.
That's correct. It's 34 metres squared if not all of the bedrooms are 10 metres squared or more. But as is set out in the report, all of the bedrooms other than bedroom 6 are 10 metres squared or more, and bedroom 6 is only 0.1 metres squared. So officers are content that the smaller size is acceptable.
Nevertheless, the size provided for in the guidance is 32 metres squared, and it should have said so in that table.
Yes, the table could and has clarified elsewhere in the agenda, you're right, what the proposal is and what it can be reduced to in the event of all bedrooms being more than 10 metres squared.
It's the fact that it says size provided for in guidance, and that table is therefore wrong, isn't it? Good, thank you very much.
Gerald.
If we've got to comments.
Unless there are any further questions, yes?
Chair, at this committee, I regularly propose that we give planning permission to HMOs because they meet the criteria as set out by this council. I don't often like it, but we've set rules and therefore we need to abide by those rules. In this case, there are 5 rooms which fall below the size that this council has defined as being needed to be giving planning permission. If this application had all those 5 rooms at the size as defined by the council that should be, I would unhappily, but I would propose giving planning permission. In this case, I think it's absolutely clear that I have to propose that we refuse planning permission because there are 5 rooms that are below the size stated in the council's policy. I don't think we have any room for manoeuvre at all, and therefore if we're continuing to expect members to grant planning permission where they don't particularly want to but where the rules say we have to, in exactly the same way, if there are rooms that are below the space standard, then I think we have to accept that we have no choice here and that we have to say no because there are 5 rooms below the space standard. So I'm proposing that we refuse planning permission on the grounds that there are 5 rooms here that fall below the space standard as set out by Portsmouth City Council.
Second that, we have rules and we must keep to them for the sake of the residents and for the sake of setting precedents that are going to create poor living conditions.
Thank you, Judith. Juliet, did you get the wording?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to really confirm, as is set out in the officer report, that the difference in size of the rooms between the standard that you have and what is proposed is considered to be so small by officers that it wouldn't be perceptible, wouldn't make a meaningful difference, and therefore is de minimis, and we wouldn't advise that that would provide a safe reason for refusal that officers could defend at appeal. Thank you, Chair.
I think we fully understand that and are very much understand your advice, but this has been a long contested position and our standards are very important to most of us on this committee.
John.
Chair, I just worry that the gentleman, the landlord owner, came along to formalise these arrangements, didn't have to, as I understand it from what he said this morning as well. And the officers are seeking to clarify the situation for us, that it's a minimal difference. I fear, notwithstanding what Ian has said about what's coming up in the new year, I fear that people aren't going to come forward and do these sorts of things if we take the view that some might be taking now. Thank you.
You're not moving a motion at this moment. Okay. Any other comments?
Chair, I think we're as a committee expected to look at these planning applications, and where the planning applications meet the criteria set down by the council within our policies, to grant them planning permission even if we don't like them. It seems to me you can't have one rule for us and one rule for a different group of people. And therefore it seems to me, if you're going to expect us as councillors to stick to the rules as set out by the council, we should expect the same rules to be accepted and stuck to by planning officers working for the City Council. If we don't do that, I'm very happy to start moving refusal for every HMO that's going on the basis that the rules don't count.
Councillor Smith.
Chair, but then that, if you widen that out a bit, then when it comes to Tipner development, we listen to the advice of the officers, and we have to we take that advice on board, whereas we're not seeming to do that now.
Of course, we consider each application on its own merits. Sure.
Yeah, just I wanted to say actually, number one, as council, we need to stick to the rules what the planning provided to us. And if we don't stick to the rules, it means we will, the agreement, we have to agree to everything. But if they are not according the sizes provided, or the room sizes provided, if they are not according the guidance, then obviously we need to refuse it.
Thank you, Shah. I think Councillor Candlish.
Chair, I'm nervous about this. Whilst I fully understand why the committee wants to follow a set of guidance which we have laid down, because that gives us the power to act and to refuse, we are in danger of taking away our opportunity to be thoughtful about specific applications. So in previous HMOs, we have discussed, for example, the shape of a room and how that makes a material difference to whether that room is acceptable in counting towards a particular area measurement. And I supported that because sometimes the rooms were so narrow that the usable space was different to the physical space. Now this is the opposite way around, in which it is slightly under the space that we have set as our guidance, but that the room's shape is actually quite usable. And therefore, given the issues that we face, I am reluctant to follow the conversation and direction that other people have taken on this matter.
Are you moving the officer's recommendation?
Chair, my plan has actually been to abstain because it seems that the majority of the committee have a view, and I don't want to go against the committee because I think there is something, we have spoken about this issue a lot as a committee, and I think to go against it would be wrong, but I'm going to struggle to rule against the application.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll see how the debate goes. Can I just take Councillor Vallely? Been waiting.
In the new era of common sense, this is ridiculous. This is a tiny amount, tiny amount. And I think it's madness that we can't let it through.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
I just wanted to turn to the question you posed to the legal advisor, the wording of the motion. The wording used by Councillor Vernon-Jackson was the fact that it fails to comply with standards. My advice, members, is that is not a robust reason to withhold plan permission. Your policy, and that's what you must apply, and you absolutely must make determinations in accordance with your policy unless material considerations dictate otherwise, is to create good living environments. So it's a judgment whether this is, we have some guidance that says, well, we know if it's over a certain size, probably is, as Councillor Candlish has eloquently pointed out, doesn't always mean the case. A badly laid out room could be adequate size but equally unavailable. So the conclusion you must, if you wish to take the direction, Councillor Vernon-Jackson, you were going, is that the room is creating an unacceptable, or it's actually not the room, of course, because the room is plenty large enough to be a bedroom. The dwelling is an unacceptable living environment for the proposed 7 people, and obviously you would be relying on that 0.1 square metre under provision of that 1 bedroom to justify your case. The resultant impacts on with the bathrooms as well, and obviously the associated larger living space. I would flag to members that this site has been licensed by your private sector housing team for this number of occupiers, so they've gone in and done an actual assessment, not on a drawing. They walked around the building and said, yes, this is an acceptable living environment for 7 people. So you are taking a contrary view, which is entirely your right. But no, that's just it's nothing to do with numbers. I've told this committee many times, you can't plan by numbers. It's a judgment. Is this a reasonable living environment? Planning officers, based on the plans, because when we did our site visit, it hadn't done the final construction work. We were satisfied that there's de minimis failings across a couple of rooms, but overall it's a reasonable layout and a reasonable living environment for future residents. The private sector housing team have done a more detailed, nuanced assessment, as licensing does, much better place to do it than planning. They've said it's a reasonable assessment. You have to come to your own judgment of whether or not this is a reasonable living environment, and that would be the wording one must use in a motion to refuse it on that basis.
Thank you. Gerald, can you turn your microphone off there?
I was trying to come in.
Judith's been waiting very patiently.
Thank you. I just wanted to be very clear what my feelings about this one. I can completely understand and have some sympathy with the fact that the layout of the substandard room, which is not very, very much substandard, is marginal indifference. I'm not arguing the case to refuse it on those grounds. I'm arguing the case for refusing it on the grounds that the communal area isn't sufficient. And we do have this provision that if the bedrooms are all larger, and there is one very large bedroom in here, so they would be all right, but everybody else, I think I'm always worried about those communal spaces and how 7 people are going to cook 7 separate meals at the same time. And my worry still remains there. And it is actually very often that consideration that prompts me to move towards following our rules. I think we would refuse it on the grounds that it's substandard, that there's a substandard room, substandard size of the communal living, actually, rather than of the single bedroom, or both we can do. But second of all, and I fully take the point about the shapes of rooms, I've looked at this very carefully. We also, I think, usually when we've got into this situation, we usually add reasons about mitigation and the impact of the Solent Special Protection Area, and 1 or 2 other reasons for refusing an application, which I'd like to seek advice on. But again, I think these are all very difficult, these ones, and I can see where people are coming from, but what I want to do is to deter people from applying when they're not following the rules. And this is a clear example of slippage of standards, which for me is sufficient, given the size of the communal living spaces, to continue with my recommendation that we refuse this application.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Smith and then Councillor Vernon-Jackson.
Chair, after listening to some of my other colleagues' eloquent comments, I would like to move the officer's report.
Thank you.
Chair, the officer's report was that it didn't need planning permission, so you actually need to put forward a different recommendation.
If I may assist, obviously in these circumstances we provided, it's in paragraph 6.2 of the report, the example conditions one might impose if plan permission is needed, and obviously that would also pick up the nitrate issue that Councillor Smythe has referred to a moment ago, so it would be to grant plan permission subject to the conditions as described in paragraph 6.2.
And that's good, yeah, that works, but there hasn't been a seconder yet.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the advice, Ian. I think that provides the wording that Juliet will want. And I think it's sensible to refer to, in my view, 6 rooms fall below the space standard, which is bedroom 6, Bedrooms 7, because if you look at it, a large proportion of that room is a corridor. So I don't, and using Ian, thanks Ian for your helpful thing, information, because I think that increases the number of rooms where we need to look at usable space, and a corridor is not usable space. So it's on the second floor, it's the one on the top right. As you can see, there's a very long corridor that leads to the usable space. I don't think you can count that corridor within a bedroom. And then on suite B1, B5, B6, and as Judith has so sensibly said, the living space is substantially below that we would require. So this is substandard. I think the other important bit is we are always told that that planning and licensing are separate, that we should not take the view of the licensing department in terms of granting a license, in terms of saying whether that should have planning permission or not, that the two systems are entirely separate. Personally, I would like to have them together, because it seems to me it's mad that they're not, but we all know planning rules are not always logical. It seems to me that the wording needs to reflect that this would be substandard accommodation, as 6 rooms fall below the criteria as for space standards as set out by Portsmouth City Council.
Clarify, it's bedroom
Gerald, if you could
7
switch
by
microphone.
virtue of the layout, the corridor, and bedroom 6 by virtue of its being under 10 metres squared.
Chair, if I may assist.
One second, Judith, could you turn your microphone off? Helpful, thank you.
I fear members may be misdirecting themselves somewhat here. The interplay, as Councillor Smythe highlighted earlier in the erroneous description in the table, is around the communal space. Obviously, every single one of these bedrooms, even if you were to take off that corridor, and entirely legitimate judgments you can make, are plenty large enough to meet that 6.5 metre minimum size. They are not inadequate bedrooms. A reason for refusal saying those bedrooms are of inadequate size has no hope of survival. We have the larger 10 metre one, which one can argue they're not, and that's fine, because the logic of that is they're not just bedrooms, they're bedrooms with areas where the occupant can recreate. And we allow that larger, if they are large enough to allow that recreational space, we allow a reduction in the communal floor space accordingly. A straightforward mathematical adjustment within the processes. Therefore, if the bedrooms are not big enough to recreate, it isn't that the bedrooms are substandard. That's not correct. It is that the communal space is substandard. So that's the one room of concern. That is a separate concern to the bathroom concern, because obviously no one's recreating or doing anything in the bathroom other than normal ablutions, we'll assume. And the question and the statement you are making, therefore, is, and this is contrary to the professional advice of officers, both licensing and planning officers, that those bathrooms are not fit for purpose, that people cannot comfortably use those bathrooms. If that is a statement you wish to make, that is a reason to withhold plan permission. As I say, because of the de minimis size challenges, and the illustrative plans show how they would be laid out. You can see that how you can get the necessary the necessary goods in there easily, the sanitary goods in there easily enough, and it has been licensed accordingly. I give very little, if any, chance of success suggesting that those bathrooms are not fit for purpose. So you've got two very different reasons. One, the communal space, which will be something that residents have to rely on because a couple of them can't enjoy their rooms in the way we otherwise would have liked in that judgment. And two, those bathrooms are not fit for purpose to do their jobs as shower rooms. They're two. It's all part of the overall living environment, PCS 23 of your local plan, but two very different judgments. And this is why we don't do planning by numbers. You can't say there are 6 rooms that are too small. That's just not true, because by one being too small means the other one's plenty big enough. So you've got to make sure you're properly articulating a real reason for refusal, that you feel people will not comfortably live in this house because ... In this case, they will have an insufficient space in their bedrooms to recreate, putting undue pressure on their living space, and their bathrooms are insufficient to fulfil the purposes. that might be your judgment. I say it's in no way professional guidance, and I give you very little, I give you no chance of success on appeal for that, but that's the judgment that you can exercise.
Just to reiterate, the problem is the communal areas. I wonder if it would be helpful to backtrack to ask the actual size, excluding the corridor of bedroom number 7. Do we know that? Because really you can't live in the corridor. Is it up to the 6.51 metres squared? That's a question which I should have asked before.
We're just going to get that from officers.
So I know they've done a measurement already, and it's at 8 metres squared. They can get that was just
Okay,
a quick judge measurement. They can give you something more accurate.
If that's the case,
if that helps.
then that very slightly weakens the argument. But the main argument is that it isn't up to standard as a house for 7 people because of the small size of the communal living areas. And I think,
All right, let's try and make some progress.
and it's for 2. Obviously, it affects 2 people disproportionately.
And you got that, Juliet?
The planning officer needs to be sure what the reason for refusal is, and he'll say it back to members before we go for the vote.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Understand that members' concern is that bedrooms 6 and 7 are not big enough to allow the appropriate standard of recreation within the bedrooms. And as a consequence of that, the bedroom size has a knock-on impact to the combined living space, which isn't of sufficient standard to allow them to alternatively recreate in that space, contrary to policy PCS 20 and the HMO SPD.
To add,
23,
Chair,
sorry.
there's no cycle spaces shown, so that could be added, I guess.
Would be PCS 23.
23, yep, that's it. And yes, cycle spaces is something that could obviously be addressed through condition rather than needing to be a reason for refusal.
Okay, it's not in the planning application, that's all.
It wasn't listed as a condition because it was officers' advice that the proposal didn't need planning permission, but if members felt that cycle storage was required because it does need planning permission, then that could be included as a condition, the cycle storage, and there's space within the garden to achieve that.
Chairman.
Was thinking it could have been, as it's not included in here, it could have been included as an additional reason for refusal. I realise it probably wouldn't stand on its own.
No, it wouldn't stand because it's possible. It's a matter that's possible to address through a condition.
We also just need
Thank
to
you
make...
for that advice.
Sorry, Chair. We need to make sure we're covering the SPA matters too for the Section 106.
That's not included in the application either.
Yes, you've decided that planning permission is needed, so when you apply the SPA policies, you'll be requiring a contribution towards nitrates and recreational disturbance.
I was just trying to strengthen the reasons for refusals and check that out with officers.
But we only have members, we've got one motion before. Were you happy with the wording as proposer and seconder? Yeah. Okay. Members, is there anything else? We've got one motion on the table. Okay. Then we move to the vote. Councillor Vernon-Jackson, Councillor Smythe. Well, there was no seconder. We haven't had a seconder for Councillor Smith's. Okay, right. Those in favour of the motion to refuse planning permission, as we've decided it requires planning permission. Okay, against and abstentions. Thank you.
Planning permission was refused.
Thank you, Juliet. Okay, we move on to Angusteen Road.
Thank you, Chair. This is a proposal for a 7-bed HMO from a 4-bedroom HMO at the Mid-Terrace 31 Angustine Road. Permitted development extensions are shown, including a rear extension, dormer and roof lights, but these works are yet to be carried out. All rooms meet or exceed the required standards as set out at page 15 and 16. The communal area is at and above the 22.5 metres squared standard due to all bedrooms being greater than 10 metres squared. As an HMO already, the proposal does not increase the percentage of HMOs within the area, which stays at 6.89%. Officer consideration is that the number of additional residents above the existing would not result in any significant material harms that could warrant refusal of the application. The proposal is considered to meet all relevant policies and is therefore recommended for approval. There is a short update within the SMAT confirming that the highway officer has no objection and that following communication with an objector, an additional suggested HMO has been reviewed and no evidence of this being an HMO is found. There is also a minor change to condition 2 to refer to the correct site address. The recommendations for approval, subject to the conditions and completion of a legal agreement to secure mitigation to the Solent Special Protection Area. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr Fielder, over to you. You have 6 minutes to give your deputation.
Thank you. I'm here today to voice my objections to the planning application that you have before you for 31 Angustine Road, to being overdeveloped from an existing 4-bed HMO to a 7-bed HMO, which this will increase the occupancy and all the environmental services, waste and parking issues by 60%, unlike when HMOs are creating that one extra bedroom, which is mentioned in the planning officer's assessment as being only 17%, as was in the case of Lane. I've lived in my house since 1991, having seen lots of changes, some for the better, some for the worse, and I do not believe this is in the best interests of the keeping of the street. There have been several objections from various households within the street, of which I hope all the committee here today has had time to read. At present, the council said there are only 3 MHNOs, and from what the planning officers have said now that they've investigated number 23, and they feel that it's not, although they have said in here that it will be going to be investigated by the where is it, licensing, there is something in here as HMO, sorry I can't see that bit now, but the licensing is going to look at that a bit better. Okay, further to my concerns, I would like to bring the committee's attention that the properties do not have adequate space for the 60% increase in household waste bins being kept out in the forecourt at the front of the property due to the small space, which in my opinion can be unsightly and does lower the street appeal. The Victorian sewers, when built, were designed for properties with at most 1 toilet, although many have progressed to 2 in a property. Putting 8 bathrooms into a space of a 3-bed terrace is an increase of over 60% and will only put more strain on an outdated sewage system and could lead to more blockages and possible flooding. There is a possibility of more noise disturbances with the extra level of occupancy of 7, but could become double that if friends and partners are staying over, with more comings and goings. At present, I've had to put up with lots of door banging and raised voices when the 4 rooms were occupied. And I've been warned that also it may take 5 to 6 months worth of work that I will be subjected to. I understand my daughter works nights, which would affect her quite considerably for that length of time. And we do feel that it would have a negative outcome on our well-being, especially for these excessive changes that we feel that are only being done for profit. The parking at present in the street and around the local area is a constant problem for local residents, and in my opinion already full to capacity. The planning office has stated that this 7-bed HMO will not cause any more strain on the parking in the street, which I can wholeheartedly disagree with, as I am and my fellow residents are already living with the nightmare of trying to find somewhere to park, and we even have to pay for this permit. I hear you say, why does 1 more 7-bed HMO make a difference? I'll tell you it's because the landlord of this property has already advised us that he will only be letting to professional people like businessmen, doctors and nurses, which in reality will all need a car to get around. Yes, the property would only be allowed 2 permits, but daily permits are easily obtained once you are registered at an address. And due to the fact that there are going to be professional people there, they would be able to afford them to find a way around the parking issues. The problem we have at the moment is, yes, we've only got, it would be 4 HMOs in that street, but most of the houses in that street have already been converted into flats, which therefore doubles the occupancy of that whole street. My last and final point I would like to raise is that the side of the street, this side of my street, has no loft conversions, and all the front you may see 2 Velox windows. From the side, because it's close to the side street, is a different matter, as the dormer will be very visible and will also extend the view over gardens in its proximity, let alone of loss of light from overhead. I see no reason why this should be granted planning approval, as at present it sits well within the constraints of the original building that is 123 years old, and the only reason for extending is not to help with the housing shortages, but to increase profit for the owners at the detriment to others that already live here. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, Mr. Builder. Deputation on behalf of the agent. Carry on.
Thank you. At Applecore, we are passionate about providing high-quality shared homes. We have an ever-growing reputation for high-end design HMOs for both students and young professionals. The increase in quality HMOs in the city is in part due to high standards introduced by members of this planning committee, and also in part due to some of the clients we at Applecore represent, who share our passion for high-end shared living. There has been a growing demand for HMO accommodation within Portsmouth for young professionals who cannot afford to get on the property ladder, for which HMOs are an ideal solution for an all-bills-included opportunity for independent living. Shared living spaces which are well designed and well managed offer the residents a high-quality home. Outside of Applecore, I am a member of Portsmouth Landlords Association and regularly attend meetings. I have discussions with various landlords on a frequent basis. It's becoming more and more apparent that many landlords are exiting the rental sector. Smaller HMOs are becoming less viable due to rising utility costs and the newly implemented additional licensing scheme. This has led to many landlords who are either unwilling or unable to do works in order to be compliant with the new licensing scheme, selling their smaller HMOs or switching back to family lets. This in turn places a greater need for the growing market in larger HMOs which have been fully renovated and provide high-end, energy-efficient living with spacious bedrooms and well-designed communal areas. As many of you will know, I'm extremely passionate about providing high-end HMOs in Portsmouth, and over the years I've been doing this and attending these meetings, I've only seen the standards rise. At Applecore, we now offer our clients a tailored package which will not only provide the drawings, but we also manage the project throughout, ensuring the builders we use cause as little disruption as possible and trying to build relationships with the neighbours throughout. We have one of these projects coming up to completion in Cosham, and I would love to offer you an invite so you can all fully appreciate the standards that we have and share our vision that we have at Applecore. I feel it would be beneficial for you as members to see a finished property as you vote on these projects so regularly. It would be fantastic to see you all there. In regards to 31 Ancaster Road, it's an existing 4-bed HMO, and the proposed use will provide bedrooms all above 10 square metres. The required communal area for 7 persons when bedrooms meet the 10 square metre room size is 22.5. This property provides 24.32 square metres of communal area. All of the spacious bedrooms benefit from an ensuite, and an additional WC is further provided on the ground floor for the comfort of the residents. The property can also be accessed from an alleyway at the rear, providing additional convenience for residents in not having to take a cycle through the property, and a secure weatherproof cycle enclosure will be provided within the rear garden. I wanted to address a couple of the worries that Mr. Fielder had. So bins, there won't be any extra bins within the forecourt. There will still be 2 bins, they will just be slightly larger. So in my opinion, not any significant difference from what will be there already. Banging and noise from the property will be upgraded and the insulation upgraded to comply with current building regs. So the noise from this property will be significantly lower than what the existing property currently, the effect this existing property currently has on the neighbour. This application fully complies with policy PCS 17 and PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan. Also fully complies with your space standards supplementary planning document. As Councillor Jackson has previously stated, there is a space standard set in place by Portsmouth City Council, and this application, like the others I represent today, fully comply with that standard. I ask you all to fully support this recommendation for approval today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind invitation. Members, questions? Comments? Councillor Smythe.
This application fully complies with our space standards, and whilst I can understand the concerns of local residents, I would move that we accept the officer's recommendation. I am concerned the conditions at the end do have cycle storage, so I think I'm happy with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Vernon-Jackson.
Chair, as the debate we've just had on the previous application, I'm not keen on having HMOs. But if we have rules of what happens, then I think we have to stick to it. Otherwise, my argument about the previous application falls. Now, I know colleagues here some colleagues didn't support that because they're not keen on the rules, and I'm sure that there will be some people who will want to move refusal because of they don't think the rules should stick. But I think if the physical works that are going to take place, as I understand it, don't need planning permission because the government has given people the power to do this under permitted development. I think that's completely wrong, but that's what the government has decided. So the physical works can take place. That if this was in Fareham, Gosport, Havant or other places, this wouldn't come here because they don't have a rule about limits of numbers of HMOs. Anybody can do it at any time. So what we're being asked to decide is, can this be a 7-person HMO when it's already an HMO? And I don't see a way of saying no to this which is legally sustainable. We've had no evidence to say that it'll cause problems with the drains. We've had in other applications people who come up with evidence, and we've taken that into account. So it is with regret, but I think we don't have any ability to do anything else, that I will second the proposal that planning permission is given, because I can't see a legal route to say no.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? Okay, we have a motion in front of us. Those in favour to move the officer's recommendations plus conditions? Against? Abstentions? Thank you, Juliet. We move on to Kensington Road. Councillor Vernon-Jackson, I understand you need to leave. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a proposal for a change of use from a dwelling to a dwelling or a 6-bed C4 HMO at the mid-terrace 2-storey property at 53 Kensington Road. Permitted development extensions are shown, including a rear single-storey extension and a dormer. Prior approval was previously given for a larger style permitted development rear extension, the length of which this seeks to include. The works are yet to be carried out. All rooms meet or exceed the required room standards as set out on page 25. There are 2 existing HMOs within a 50-metre radius. This will make a third, taking us to 6.7% if approved. Officer consideration is that the number of residents, if in use for an HMO, would not be materially different from use as a dwelling house, and this is a fallback position. Has considered that the proposal would not result in any significant material harms that would warrant refusal of the application. Proposal is considered to meet all relevant policies and guidance and is therefore recommended for approval. There is no SMAT update for this item, and the recommendation is therefore for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, yes, so Jean Routledge is not here. who was on the list. So Carrie, over to you.
As the officer says, this application is for a change of use from C3 dwelling house to dual use C3 or C4 house multiple occupation. A policy has been put in place by Portsmouth City Council to restrict the number of HMOs in a given area to 10% to ensure a mixed and balanced community. The percentage of HMOs to include the proposed HMO at Kensington Road will be 6.7. All of the bedrooms significantly exceed the required 6.5 square metres required. All of the proposed bedrooms exceed 9 square metres, in fact, so significantly exceed. The required communal area for 7 persons when all the bedrooms do not exceed 10 square metres, 34 square metres, and this property provides 34.78 of shared communal space at the rear. All of the bedrooms, also benefit from a private shower room. The house will be finished to a high specification as our client is keen to offer tenants high-end accommodation. The property will also be professionally managed and any issues, if they arise, will be dealt with promptly. The application fully complies with policy PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan and also complies with the Housing Multiple Occupation Supplementary Planning Document 2019. The planning officer has recommended this fully compliant application for approval today and I ask you all to fully support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Members. Judith.
Just a few questions. Since the density of HMOs in the area is not exceeded, we need to look next at the details. And I would like to have a further discussion about page 25, the table there, and the plans. This is an application for a six-person HMO, apparently, although it doesn't specify that in the title of the application. And I want to ask a question about, in effect, why isn't the application for 7 people, and just to tease out the figures about the communal areas on page 25. I'm not advocating I'm really asking these questions in order to see whether we can limit the occupation to 6 people, even though in this case there is a 10-metre squared living room on the ground floor which has a conveniently adjacent bathroom that could be used as an ensuite. So I wanted to question generally why, whether we could restrict this to 6 people. It doesn't seem that probably doesn't seem we can, and whether we could in fact then restrict this to 7 people, and why there's that slight discrepancy here. The bedrooms there are 2 bedrooms that meet the 6.51 metre standard but don't meet the 10 metres square standard. So we're not talking about reducing living rooms down to 22 metres, 0.5 metres squared, but we still have a communal kitchen dining area that's 35.78 metres squared. So it would be past our standards for 7 people. If I've read the figures right, and I'd just like to check that through a question, please.
Do we have a slide that shows the room layouts? Sometimes it's easier to see it on. Thank you.
Yeah, that's on screen for you now, Chair, although quite small, so it may be difficult to read, but the table on page 25 does accurately represent the figures that are shown there and has been checked by officers. So in terms of the first question, I suppose, why is this an application for a 6-bedroom HMO and not a 7-bed HMO? That's not one as officers we can answer. That's something that the applicant has chosen to do. In terms of his next question, in terms of could we restrict it to a 6-bedroom HMO, then clearly there is a ground floor room that could be used as a 7th bedroom, and I'm sure that may be the future intention of the applicant. If that was to be the proposal, then the officer recommendation would still remain to be for approval. So it's officer advice that there couldn't be a reason to restrict the number of occupants here to 6 occupants, because in our view having 7 occupants here wouldn't result in a material change of use, and in any event, even if members were to feel differently, there wouldn't be any significant additional material harm differing from 6 and 7 in this instance, noting, as you say, that the room sizes including the communal living area, are large and meet all of the standards. Thank you, Chair.
Supplementary question, Chair, if I may. Very often when we see a planning application that doesn't have the number of people specified in the heading particularly, and it's only in the text here that 6 is mentioned, would it be more sensible for us to avoid the cost of additional planning applications in the future and put 7 here? Would we be in... Normally on the heading has the number of people proposed. It doesn't here.
You're considering what the applicant has put before you. In that case, it's a 6-bedroom HMO with a floor plan that shows that. So that's what we'd be approving, and that's what the condition that sets out accordance with the approved plans would seek and secure.
I may not have made myself entirely clear. Normally, when we are not absolutely certain that the number is fixed through the content of the planning application, we put a condition on that it may not be occupied by more than 6, 7 people, what it is. And I came to this question by thinking what would be the reasonable thing to put in were we to... we get advice that's not strictly speaking necessary, but it gives us comfort. And I was trying to, by questions, ask for your advice on whether it should be 6 or 7.
Absolutely, Chair. Officer's view here is that it wouldn't be necessary or reasonable to impose a condition restricting the number of occupants to 6 in this instance, where a 7th bedroom could be created and wouldn't, A, in an officer's view, be a material change of use, but B, if you members considered it was a material change of use, wouldn't be harmful. There wouldn't be any significant additional material impacts as a result of that 7th bedroom in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
I'm so sorry, that doesn't answer my question quite. May I just... This is quite an important point, this, because what we don't want is to see 8 or 9 people living there.
Chair,
And I'm...
apologies, just to give it in a different phrase to see if that helps. I entirely understand the point, Councillor Smythe. Officers are not going to advise you whether you should restrict it to 6 or 7. Our advice is you shouldn't restrict it. In truth, this building is capable of being 6, 7 or 8 and still meeting the standards of your SPD, because one of those bedrooms, the one that's over 11 square metres, could have a double bed in it and meet your standards on that point. So our advice is not to restrict it. Clearly, if I was to be further helpful, this is not the professional advice of officers. Any number that is 7 or 8 is nonsensical, because that's not what the applicant has applied for. They have applied for a C4 use and shown 6 bedrooms, but we're not going to give you encouragement or support to impose a condition to restrict it to 6 or 7.
Okay, I'm trying to be helpful. Doing a planning application costs public money. It costs our time. There's already half an hour gone on. I just, but I don't myself. I wouldn't myself want to give it permission for 8 people or 9 people, or even for that to go through without coming to the planning committee. I'll leave it with others, but I would be probably recommending an approval with a condition for 7 people.
The description has got C4 on it, which is up to 6 persons, if that's helpful.
You're looking for that bit extra?
Well, I'm looking to what's in the public interest long term.
Mary, did you want to come in?
I get what Judith's saying completely. It's about saving time and money, and public money at that. You know, if we put 7 on it now, then they've the choice of having 7 people.
It's unnecessary, in officer's view, to add that restriction.
Okay. Peter.
Chair, are we on questions or comments? Sorry, I've lost. In that case...
We'll move on to comments.
My comment is, whilst I agree with what Councillor Smythe is saying about the inefficiencies of the process, having joined the planning committee, I'm not convinced that the overall system is the most efficient that could be designed by the wit of man. But given that that is what we have, I would be reluctant to try to play a ball that has not yet been bowled by a landlord and therefore leave it as it is, because I understand that one of the reasons the landlords are doing this is because they too are operating with an inefficient system. But unfortunately, I don't think it should be, this committee should not be trying to solve that problem. And therefore, I will reluctantly probably be supporting this application as it lies in front of me.
Were you moving the officer's recommendation? Almost.
I am happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. Did you want to add anything? Okay. Well, we've got one motion before us to move the officer's recommendation. Those in favour, please indicate. Against? And abstentions?
Planning permission is therefore granted.
Thank you, Juliet. On to Shadwell Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a proposal for a change of use from a dwelling to a dwelling or a 6-bed C4 HMO at the mid-terrace property 29 Shadwell Road. Permitted extensions are shown, including a rear single-storey extension and a dormer, and these works have been carried out. All rooms meet or exceed the required room size standards as set out on page 36. There are 4 existing HMOs within a 50-metre radius, and this would make a 5th, taking us to 7.1% if approved. Officer consideration is that the number of residents, if in use for an HMO, would not be materially different from use as a dwelling house, and this is a fallback position. It's considered that the proposal would not result in any significant material harms that could warrant refusal of the application. The proposal is considered to meet all relevant policies and guidance and is therefore recommended for approval. And there's no SMAT update for this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. 6 minutes, not a second longer, Mr. Hill. Clock's started.
I've set an alarm so that we both know whether I'm on time or not. So, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. First point I'd like to make is the works to this property did not require planning permission. All of the works that have been carried out are possible under permitted development. So that means if it were a family house we could do the works. Couple of the main points I'd like to present, which is, as it says in the officer's report, all of the rooms are fully compliant with the space standards. There's no corridors. I don't think there's anything contentious whatsoever. And if ever there were a house, in my opinion, which were a good enough size to be an HMO, this is definitely one of them, because the size of the rooms is absolutely huge. We will be providing additional bins, so larger and additional bins for both the refuse and recycling. We also have a waste carriers license, so any additional waste when people move in or out or whatever will be gotten rid of using our waste carriers license. We have upgraded all of the plumbing and drainage within the grounds of the property, and we've also put what's called a DAB tank in, which is basically a cold water storage tank, so that we can ensure that all of the tenants can have a hot shower at the same time. So we've got a hot water cylinder as well as a DAB tank. The property is fully compliant with building regulations. What does that mean? It means any and all steels within the property have had structural calculations. The structural works are inspected by building control. It also means that there are very significant amounts of insulation between every single room and bathroom, between all the floors, and between the rooms and the adjoining properties. So you often hear the questions about noise and that side of things. Ultimately, everything we possibly can foresee and do to minimise the amount of noise that transfers between rooms within the property and to next door have been done. Ultimately, as you well know, we aim to provide a very high quality standard of accommodation. Just to pick up on the point, because those of you with an eager eye will see that there is a study, and I'm sure that will come up. Ultimately, this property, the application was submitted back in April. It took a month for it to be validated, and this is not in any way me having a go at the planning department, because I know they do a brilliant job, but on this occasion, it took a month for it to be validated. We're now 7 months down the line from when the application was submitted, minus 3 days, and we're about to find out whether we get planning permission or not. That is one of the reasons that, based on previous advice, we do a two-step process, because we simply cannot afford to have properties like this sat on bridging finance for months and months and months on end, not getting a decision, go into appeal, because as soon as we appeal this, because it's non-determination within, I'll just point you to the website. If you go to Portsmouth City Council planning and you type in planning application and process, under how is a planning application decided, the first line says the whole decision-making process should take about 8 weeks to complete. We're 7 months in. That is why we do a two-step process. I do fully understand the pressures the planning department have been under, and we had a conversation at the last one, which means that any applications we do moving forwards will be submitted in a different manner. But to answer the question as to why do we typically do this in more than one process, that's exactly why. Yes, lots of people don't like to think that developers make a profit, but ultimately, if it wasn't profitable to do HMOs in Portsmouth because of the time taken or because of various other things, we just do them in other cities. We know the process, we know the properties, we know how it's done, we just go to Southampton or Guildford or whatever it would be. Point being, and I've got 1 minute 45 left to go, is we do really, really, really good standard properties that are really desirable for tenants. One of the other things that was said a minute ago, and Gerald's not here to defend himself, but he said, I don't like HMOs. I wish that would change from I don't like HMOs to I don't like substandard HMOs, which are poorly managed and poorly maintained and not occupied by the tenants who want to live in shared houses. That'd be such a better statement. I wish it was, I am open to high quality HMOs which are well managed and meet our criteria that we set out as a council. Because again, I think that would be a much better thing to say. So for me, I would love you to approve this application. I believe it's fully compliant. I hope I've explained why we've taken the process that we have. All of the works are now complete to this as a C3, C4, 6-bed HMO. We're happy with the nitrate contributions and with cycle storage, which we've already implemented in the property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, Councillor Vernon Jackson's views were his own, not the views of the committee. Members, questions, comments? I shall helpfully move the officer's recommendation. I think it's seconded by Councillor Smith. Are there any other thoughts, ideas, views? We shall move to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you.
Planning permission is therefore granted.
Thank you. Chichester Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a proposal for a change of use from a dwelling to a sui generis 7-bed HMO at the Mid-Terrace Property 237 Chichester Road. There is a short SMAT confirming the property numbers in the HMO table. The 50-metre radius are correct within the table within the map rather than the text within the officer report. Planning permission has previously been granted for a 6-bedroom C4 HMO. A proposal differs from that by dividing the upper floor bedroom into 2 rooms. Permitted development extensions are shown, including a single-storey rear extension and a dormer, and the works have been carried out. All rooms meet or exceed the required room size standards as set out at page 45. There's one existing HMO within a 50-metre radius, and this would make a second, taking us to 3.7. But as explained, an HMO at the site has already been previously approved. Officer consideration is a number of additional residents, if in use for a 7-bed HMO, would not be materially different from use as a 6-bed HMO or a 6-bedroom dwelling house. And this previous planning permission is a fallback position. It's considered the proposal would not result in any significant material harms that would warrant refusal of the application, and it meets all policies and guidance and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Carry on. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Smythe for her previous comments regarding the possible 7-person use at 53 Kensington and trying to be helpful to the applicant in that case. Unfortunately, some applications do come to committee as a 6-bed and then return with another application for 7 persons at a later date, as Simon touched on. This is solely due to the length of the time that these applications take. A C3 to C4 application is typically a quicker application. That said, Portsmouth planning officers are working hard to deal with the backlog, and they have recruited new officers. And with this in mind, Abercorp have now been submitting more C3 to sui generis applications. You have probably noticed as things improve at the council. So 237 Chichester Road. This application is for a change of use from a C3 dwelling house to a sui generis house in multiple occupation. The property has prior planning approval for C4 HMO for up to 6 persons. Therefore, in reality today, you're just considering the addition of 1 additional person to this property. All bedrooms meet or exceed 10 square metres. The required communal area for 7 persons when all bedrooms meet this 10 square metres is 22.5 square metres, and this property provides 31.56, almost 10 square metres larger than the requirement. All of the bedrooms benefit from an ensuite, and an additional WC is further provided on the ground floor for the comfort of the residents. The property also has a rear outbuilding which will be upgraded to provide secure weatherproof cycle storage. This can be accessed from an alleyway at the rear, providing additional convenience for the residents in not having to take cycles through the property. The application fully complies with policy PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan, and also complies with the Housing Multiple Occupation Supplementary Planning Document 2019. The planning officer has recommended a fully compliant application for approval today, and I ask you all to fully support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions, comments?
Chris, I've got to disappear. Something has just come up. I've just had a message that I've got to disappear.
No, absolutely. Go and do what you need to do. Thank you. Thank you for this morning. Members, I shall move officer's recommendation, seconded by Councillor Smythe. I know this is here as a result of an objection, a call in by members. Well, where are they? And it was mentioned earlier that there is a cost to the taxpayer of us sitting here, and there really is very little reason for this application to be before us. I'd ask members, if they're watching, to carefully consider which applications they bring to committee. Okay, anything else from anybody else in respect of a motion? No. Okay, those in favour of moving the officer's recommendations?
That's unanimous, so planning permission is granted.
Thank you, Juliet. The other, Chichester Road.
Thank you, Chairman. There is a SMAT that confirms here that a licence has been granted, which is an update from the agenda paper that you have that confirmed that it was pending. But also, the SMAT confirms that there had not been a licence before. This therefore means that this is actually a proposal from a C3 dwelling house to a 7-bed HMO, and therefore planning permission is necessary, and conditions and a Section 111 legal agreement to secure mitigation towards the SPA, Solent SPA, is necessary. So there's a change in the recommendation there within your SMAT, and a change from what the proposal is from, but not to. Planning permission was granted in October last year for the change of use to a 6-bedroom HMO. Permitted development works were shown as part of that have been carried out to the building. It's officer assessment that the proposed increase of 1 bedroom from a 6-bedroom to a 7-bedroom HMO, which is achieved by a room that was shown as a living room on the ground floor, being shown to be used as a bedroom instead, is not significant of any significant additional impact. All rooms remain to meet the space standards as shown on page 51. The proposal is recommended for approval and is considered to meet relevant policies and guidance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Start your stopwatch. Councillor Smythe.
Could the officers clarify the...
Well, we've got a deputation first.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought
That's
you
okay.
said yes. I didn't.
No. 6 valuable minutes.
No worries. Thank you very much for letting me deputise on this property. Much appreciated. As already outlined by the planning officer, this is technically a change of use from a C3 to a sui generis property. However, we already have planning permission for it to be a C3, C4, which we've implemented, and the property does have a licence. So that means the licensing department have already confirmed that they are happy with the size, space standards, etc. Although I fully understand that that is an entirely separate department with separate rules to yourselves. As with the application on 29 Shadwell Road, the works were carried out did not need planning permission. They were carried out under permitted development. That is to say that anybody with this house that meets the criteria would have been able to carry out those works, whether it were a family house or whether it were a C3 or C4 HMO. We hold a waste carrier's licence, and any waste would be gotten rid of using that, as well as the additional black bins and recycling bins. This property has got quite a large forecourt, which we're able to put bins in. As you will have seen, the percentage of HMOs is significantly below the 10%. We've also put a DAB tank in this property. All of the wastewater works and plumbing in the property have been replaced, as well as all of the drainage. I forgot to say we actually jet the drains before occupation as well to make sure that they're clear from any waste at all. The Portsmouth City Council regulations are still some of the most stringent in the country, and I would actively ask you and encourage you to give us planning permission for this to be a fully compliant 7-bed, 7-ensuite HMO, so that we can provide high quality accommodation to the young people of Portsmouth that are looking for it. Just as a side note, this property has broken the ceiling of rents that we've achieved so far. What does that mean? We don't set the rents, so contrary to public opinion and many of the statements that you will see in objection, we don't choose the rents. The market chooses the rents. Economics chooses the rents, because ultimately, if we put a rent that is too low, the room will let exceptionally quickly. If we put a rent that is too high, the room will not rent at all. So economics decides the rents. If we price the rooms at the right amount, they'll let in a sensible period of time. All of these rooms rented within 2 weeks of us completing the property. Obviously, apart from the 7th room, because we're not allowed to rent it yet. Thank you very much. I hope you look favourably on the application and give us planning permission.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe.
Just a quick question. How do people get their bicycles out, and where's the bicycle storage?
I don't know if am I allowed to answer that?
Cycle storage is shown in the rear garden by virtue of the proposal, and I'd suggest, so in addition to the SMAT conditions suggesting various different elements, that the cycle storage implementation and maintenance of the cycle storage in the rear garden is conditioned as well.
Thank you. I noticed that, but it's not shown on our plans, and I wish we would have indication on the plans of where it is in future. But second of all, I asked how people get their bicycles out, and it follows in.
If we could just bring up the presentation, there is actually a rear alleyway to this garden. Thank you, Chair.
Bicycles would go in by the rear alleyway, would they?
I mean, they can do. Obviously, we can't control that, but there is a gate I can see
And is that the
to
cycle
that property as well.
store we can see at the back of the house there in that plan?
No, that's not the cycle store. There is a existing, or there was existing shed there, but the cycle store would be located in a different position, a different size.
Thank you very much. That's satisfactory. Be good to see that on the plans in future.
Members, any other questions or comments? I shall move the officer's recommendation. I'm looking for a seconder. As revised, sorry, as revised. Yeah. I think Councillor Candish got in slightly before you, John.
Can I just check? Do we need the SPA stuff on this one, Greg? I think we do, don't we?
Yes, that is part of the suggested conditions from paragraph 6.2 that's within the SMAT. So yes, that, and then an additional condition for the cycle storage to be provided and maintained and retained.
Okay, so the motion as moved by the officers with the revised bits that we just discussed. Those in favour?
That's unanimous. Planning permission's granted.
Thank you, Julia. And our final application, Military Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This is, bring the presentation up. This is an application for a minor material amendment to a previous planning permission at 17 Military Road. It relates to a first floor window moving position slightly and moving and increasing in size very slightly as well. There are no objections and the application is brought to committee as it is made by a member of Portsmouth City Council staff. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, brevity is the soul of wit. Be funny, yeah, be funny. That's our joke. Councillor Smythe.
If there are no questions, I'd like to move to approve this. I think it looks a lot better with the new window. I recommend approval according to the report.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Shah, I think. Okay, members, I fear you've had quite a long wait for a short outcome. Members, anything else? No. Those in favour?
That's unanimous. Planning permission's granted.
So I hope you've gained something from your morning with us. Thank you, members. That concludes today's meeting, and I am drawing proceedings to a close at 12:04. Thank you.